In this exclusive interview, go beyond the headlines and discover the life, work, and unwavering passion of American patriot, entrepreneur, and business leader Steve Stern. From humble beginnings to building successful businesses, Steve shares the mindset, determination, and relentless work ethic that helped him overcome obstacles and achieve success. Learn why never taking no for an answer has become one of the driving principles behind his accomplishments, and hear the lessons he's learned along the way. Known for his accessibility, integrity, and commitment to helping others, Steve is the man who still answers his own phone, a champion of independent media, and a steadfast supporter of free speech. He has become a valued friend of the Voice of the People U.S.A. radio and television network and countless individuals whose lives he has touched. Join us for an inspiring conversation with a man who proves that hard work, perseverance, loyalty, and faith in your mission can still make a difference in America today. This is the story of Steve Stern, an entrepreneur, patriot, and leader who continues to answer the call. Ladies and gentlemen, a good and happy Monday evening to you all. So, in the interest of full disclosure, this is a pre-record, which is not something that I do that often, but you got to make special arrangements when you have a legend on your show. So with that, and without further ado, a friend to not just Voice of the People, independent media, but warriors and people fighting for liberty, fighting for this country, and those who are brave enough to just go outside of the norm and put their nose down to the ground and fight like hell, regardless of what's up against them. Steve Stern. And this man is somebody, again, who you've seen on the show before. You know him. You see his election integrity calls. You see all the stuff on our network because we love him greatly. But I wanted to take this chance to do something a little bit different because it's something I had thought about for a while. And I'm upset because somebody kind of beat me to it. And that can't happen. So we have to do it right because, and I'm going to shut up here, but there's a lot of stuff you know about this man, but there's also a lot of stuff you don't know about this man. And I want to take the time and give this man the platform to tell you a little bit more about him. So, Steve, welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Today, we're going to talk about passion, precinct strategy, and election integrity. So we're going to start off with a thing called passion and why we have this passion. Well, I guess you're born with it. But the first thing is, I just celebrated my 85th birthday on May 20th, and a lot of people say, well, why do you keep going? Well, I want to tell you something that I got on my 81st birthday. As you can see this nice little letter, when I came home on my 81st birthday, May 20th, I got this letter, and my wife doesn't normally open the mail, but take a look at this little rip. And you know how God comes down and taps you on the head? Well, he must have done it because I'm going to read this letter that I got, and you're going to see that it didn't get ripped because this is the original copy of this letter, and you can see who it's from. And I'm going to read it because it's really what passion, you get an award for passion. So it says, Dear Steve, we join you and your family and friends in wishing you a happy 81st birthday. And my 81st birthday seems to be about 2 weeks ago. So as you get older, time goes by faster. So it says, Dear Steve, we join your family and friends and wish you a happy 81st birthday. Our nation is stronger because of hardworking patriots like you who believe in and defend the great American ideals of faith, family, community, and country first. Your commitment to excellence and dedication, exemplifying the American dream through ingenuity, hard work, and principled leadership, is the foundation of your tremendous success and demonstrates the proud spirit of family and owned and operated businesses. As you celebrate this special day, we hope your heart is filled with joy, knowing you have experienced our country's greatest blessings, freedom, and the affection of your loved ones. Melanie and I send our very best wishes for your continued health, happiness, success. Happy birthday, and may God bless you and your family, Donald Trump. Well, when you get something like that, you continue to work. And, some of the things you can see in the background are pictures of President Trump, myself, and I've been very honored to be up there with him a couple of times. So a lot of people ask me, how did you get started? What did you do? And how long you've been doing this? Well, I started when I was 12 years old. I was born in Brooklyn. We all went through those snowball fights and all these different things. And at 12 years old, my dad said, "Hey, we're moving to Miami." Well, I was shocked, of course. My dad was in the shirt business. Of course, you can see in the back, and we're going to talk about the shirt business. But he worked for a company, and he was an older guy. And the company he worked for, his boss, who was a little bit older than him, passed away, and his son took over. And he went to work for his company, didn't really like it because my dad was old school and the young guy wanted to change things. So he decided to quit, and he worked for another shirt company, and he had to go down to Woodbury, Tennessee from New York all the time. He didn't really like it. So his brothers were in Miami Beach, and they were both barbers, and they leased some hotels, and they said, "Hey, come on down to Florida and we'll get you a hotel and you can start working in the hotel business." Well, we got to Florida. I was 12 years old, and I saw all these beautiful palm trees, and we got to my grandfather's hotel, and we sat down with him, and he said, "You know what? We didn't get a hotel for you. We wanted you to come down." And my dad was a little upset about this. But over the next couple of months, they did get a hotel to lease. He did not like it. So he got out of that, and he went into the wholesale business with a company, and it was called Lord Daniel Sportswear. So many people don't know this, but it was owned by a rabbi and another guy, and that's why they named it Lord Daniel. Lord after the Lord, and Daniel after his son. So I was going to junior high school, and I came down by bus every day, and this was in around 1954. And all these people came from Cuba, and they opened up businesses in downtown Miami, and I would go down and walk down from his warehouse and kind of learn the business from these people who were didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak much Spanish, but they taught me a little Spanish, and I taught them a little English, and I learned the business from them, and I learned the business from my dad. So let's fast forward this till I was about 18 years old, and by then my dad had taken over the business, and I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was at a show, and during that show, I was walking around, and you know how God comes down and taps you on the head. I was looking at the booth, which looked a little bit what you see behind me. And the gentleman was displaying stuff, and he said to me, "What are you looking at, son?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking at those shirts." And these shirts happen to be what they call banded bottom shirts. A banded bottom shirt is a shirt that has a little band on the bottom. And he said, "You must be pretty smart because I'm going to make you a millionaire." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, these shirts I made for J.C. Penney, and I want to retire. I'm 80 years old." And he owned half of Laguna Beach. And he said to me, "I want to go enjoy the rest of my life because you never know how long you're going to have." So he said, "Well, why don't you buy these shirts in J.C. Penney, change the labels, and put them up at your show?" Well, I said, "Okay, I got nothing to lose." So I did that. And two guys came from Pompano, J.C. Penney, and said, "Hey, this is what we're looking for." Well, really, I had no knowledge of even those shirts, except they were banded bottom. He said, "Well, why don't you go to the buying office and they'll get you a vendor number and you could start selling them." Well, I went to New York and I walked through the Empire State Building trying to find somebody that would maybe take me overseas so I could start to buy these shirts and know what's going on. So as I was knocking on doors, I came through this company called Menswear International and met a guy who actually had no children. So when I told him what I wanted to do, he said, "Okay, look, I'll take you over to Korea, and we'll then go over to Taiwan." And that's how I met these guys from Collins International who actually started me. And I actually today we still use them, and also two or three guys that came from them. And of course, we're doing business with their sons because they long retired. So what happened was I bought a little bit of these shirts. They gave me a vendor number. We started selling them, and I produced these shirts, and we became very popular. And also, I was working with the Miami buying office, and what I would do is, they settled me up, and we would start to design these shirts, and we started to make a whole line of conservative men's shirts with pockets, and we built it up to $14 million a year for 44 years before Penny's decided to come to me and said, "Hey, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to go young. And I said to them, well, that makes no sense because your customers are pretty much all old. How are you going to get the young people in? Well, make a long story short, they called me in one day and they told me, hey, we're not going to use this anymore. We'll give you 6 months, get rid of all the stuff. So we went to Sears and we started doing business with Sears. And of course, Sears went bankrupt. So then we went with Kohl's, and then Kohl's decided they didn't want to do it anymore. They also wanted to go a little bit younger. So we went online and we started doing this and we developed the whole line, and we've been doing that ever since. So we're the largest producer of banded bottom shirts in the country. So then people ask me, well, how did you get involved in the flag shirts and everything you're doing with patriotic stuff? And about 3 or 4 years before 9/11, there was a company that Gilman Knitwear that started in 1934. And they were going out of business because JCPenney had kind of like done the same thing to us as they did to them, except they didn't have another customer and we did. So we bought their company, and they worked with us for about 2 or 3 years, and they decided to retire. And we started doing this one shirt and the flag shirt called Benji. And my son and I designed all these other shirts with designers, and we built this into the largest patriotic website in the world called theflagshirt.com.
250 years ago, a nation was born, built on courage, driven by freedom, defined by patriots who stood their ground. Today, we don't just remember that legacy, we wear it. This is more than a shirt. It's a symbol of strength, freedom, and pride. I'm Steve Stern, COO of theflagshirt.com, and I invite you to celebrate 250 years of the United States with us. Wear your pride, stand for something, get your shirts today.
So that's all part of Steve Stern and what he did. I was the secretary of the Florida Tennis Association. I've been involved in my development for 35 years on the board, and many, many other things that I've done. But let's go back to how we got started in the election integrity and the precinct strategy and what all that meant. So about 25 years ago, I joined the Broward Republican Executive Committee. And when I first got in, and it's probably the same today in a lot of ways, it took 3 months before somebody sent me or even answered the call. And they finally answered the call and they said, hey, I'd like to join. Why did it take so long? Well, we didn't have anybody answering the phones. We didn't return the calls. And it took 3 months more before I got an application. So think about this. 6 months goes by and you don't even get it into where you want to get into. And look at all these people that probably have the same amount of time. So I get into my first meeting and I sit down. Now a person comes up and says hello to me or, tells me what I got to do. And the same thing happens the next meeting. So I went up to the chairman and said, hey, can I take over the phones and can I be the membership director? Oh, that's great because, we don't have anybody doing that. The person that answers the phones just does them once in a while. So I answered all the messages that were there. And there was 186 messages. I went through them and I got 35 new members. A lot of these people that called and said, hey, we're interested like I was. And we started developing more and more people up to today where I'm the vice chair. This is my card. And it's a funny thing. I'm wearing this hat and the shirt. And I went to breakfast this morning and somebody came up to me and said, hey, you must be part of the Republican Party because nobody walks around with this stuff. And I said, yes, I'm the vice chair. Would you like to get involved? I said, yeah, I probably would. Give me the information. Let me have one of your cards. So I gave it to him. And that's the way we develop a lot of new people. So people will go out there and wear their Trump hats and their 250. And just to let you know, if you want to get a flag shirt and if you want to get your 250 official, this is our official 250 shirt, go to www.theflagshirt.com and keep this email handy, and I'm sure we'll put this up again, sstern1054@gmail.com, because we're going to answer a lot of questions today. And I want to tell you how I originally met President Trump and what it meant to me. So you could see this picture I'm going to show you. This is an event, and it's at the American Freedom Tour. So this is a number of years ago. And you can see I'm wearing my PC button, which stands for Precinct Committee Man. And we're going to talk about all this and tell you why President Trump was interested in this and why he actually endorsed precinct strategy, which we're going to talk about. And here's his little endorsement of precinct strategy. You could see that. So why is that important? Well, when I saw him, this was an event at the arena where there were 17,000 people. And I was invited there because I was helping a candidate that was running against W. Wasserman Schultz in my area. And the candidate had paid some money to come to a conference with President Trump there. They took 25 people. And the person who was running the event was very appreciative of what I did. I got him a lot of people to come and got the information out. So they invited me to visit with President Trump and also to meet a lot of different people. So we got there around 7:30 in the morning and had to go through the Secret Service. And we went to different rooms every half an hour and would meet with different people, President Trump's son. We would meet with the former governor of Arkansas, Kash Patel, many people through the day. And as we met with them, we were in a conference with 25 people and asked questions, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm going through till about 4 o'clock, and I'm there since 7:30. And as an older guy, you get a little tired. So they sat us down for about a half an hour because I didn't think I could go anymore. I mean, we walked around the arena, and the arena is pretty large, so you'd have to go to different rooms all around. So about 4 o'clock, they sat us down. And then about a half an hour later, they brought us into this room, which had very little air conditioning, with 25 people stuffed in the room. Secret Service took everything, our phones, they took our pens, anything really related, to anything that could happen to President Trump. So as you see back at this picture, this is the start of President Trump and myself and what's happened. So I asked him if he knew what precinct strategy was, because he looked at my button and he says, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, that stands for precinct committee man." And he said, "Well, we're going to go into a room with the 25 people here, and I'm going to spend about 3-4 minutes with each person. I want you to tell me about precinct strategy." "Okay, Mr. President." We went into the room, and I was about the third person he talked to. And I told him what precinct strategy was. And he said, "Well, look, give your card to my assistants, and I want you to come up to Mar-a-Lago, make an appointment, and come up there." So I gave the cards to 2 or 3 of his assistants, and they told me they'll get me up to Mar-a-Lago. And I waited about 4 or 5 weeks, and nobody contacted me. So I called Mar-a-Lago and asked for his secretary and explained to them what it was that I wanted. And I got his secretary, and she said, "Oh, let me get you up to see the former president, President Trump." And they made an appointment, and that appointment was canceled. And they said, "Well, we're going to get you up in a couple of weeks." Well, it turned out terrific, because when they got me up there, which is the other picture, I don't know if you can put me on full screen, and we get the picture in the back of me. Can you get me on full screen here a second? Yeah, see if you can broaden the screen, and we'll show you the picture below me.
I think that's as big as it's going to go.
Anyway, there's another picture here, which I don't have in front of me, but with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. And so when I went up 2 weeks, that afternoon was going to be an event for President Trump. Hang on 1 second. We got to get that out. Nothing didn't happen, but sorry about that. But, we get phone calls through the computer and everything else. So anyway, so that afternoon we're having this event, and the event was for everything President Trump had done for Israel. A group called Jexit and United West, which I was working with, and we had about 15 people working on this for 2 months. And so I was there for 2 reasons, which made a great thing. And why I had gone up to President Trump, and this was 2 days before the 2022 election. And I went up there about 4 o'clock, and my wife went up and my grandson, and Liz Harrington came in. They flew her in because she was one of the ones who got President Trump to endorse it with myself, Steve Bannon, Dan Schultz. So she was up there and about 4 or 5 of his secretaries, and we're sitting there. And, I went up there and I brought him a couple of flag shirts. He thanked me very much. And he was, while we were there for about 45 minutes, he was talking to his pollster. And he was asking different things. And, I said, wait, let me ask him if he would endorse a couple of my candidates. And I was very friendly with a guy running in Vermont and New Hampshire. And he actually said he would endorse them, but he first called his pollster to ask how they were doing. And the pollster said, well, they were down about 4 or 5 points. And, these were Democratic areas, but he did endorse them, which was very nice 2 days before the election. And, I asked him if he would talk. The main reason I went up there was to ask him if he would talk during his rallies for his next election, where he would talk about different things and talk about getting people involved in the Republican Party. So let's talk about what precinct strategy is. So precinct strategy is something that Dan Schultz started with Steve Bannon about 14, 15 years ago. And if you look at this, and everybody should get Dan's book. Go to www.precinctstrategy.com. This is very important because this tells you how to become involved in the Republican Party. Now, there's 400,000 slots, 200,000 people involved 5 years ago. Today, there's 400,000 slots, and it's still 200,000 people involved. And what is a precinct committee man and committee woman? Well, every county in the United States has precincts, and you have to be elected or appointed or voted in. So you attend meetings, you vote, you get candidates elected. That's how candidates get elected. They're helped by a precinct committee men and committee women. You canvass neighborhoods, you poll watch, and you do phone calls and many, many other things. And we have about 250 members in Broward County, along with 15 clubs with 700 members. So we work very hard and get election people involved. And that's why we asked President Trump to ask people to get involved. But something very big happened during this particular talk. While we were going over all this stuff, President Trump asked me, what did I think about the 2024 election? And I said to him, well, we know the 2020 election was stolen and the 2024 election was not much different. So he asked me if I could do an election security call with our precinct strategy call. And he knew I was doing the precinct strategy call because Liz Harrington had told him. And we have been doing that for about 3 years. And we were going to add our election security call on it. And I said to the president, I really didn't know much about election security, but let me find out. And about 5 weeks later, after calling 100 people and knowing who the experts were on precinct strategy and election integrity, we added that to our calls. And we got about 600-700 people involved on Zoom. And we were doing that for a number of years until about 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago. Steve Bannon puts it live on his War Room and on Getter account. How did that happen? I was on in the morning, and he put my email on the bottom of the screen as stern1054@gmail.com. We got 1,000 people to sign up. And it took me 3 hours to get them links because we had to get them links to get on. And then about a day later, Maureen Bannon called me and said, hey, we had 60,000 people watching this show. She said that was unbelievable. And, as an older guy, I said, you got to learn something new every day. So we started getting podcasters like you and networks together. And today we have about 150 podcasters. And we have many networks, Getter, Rumble, Facebook, CloudHub, Lindell TV, OBBM Network, Stern American Rumble. So let's talk about Stern American Rumble a second. SternAmericanRumble.com. If you go there, everything is posted there, and you can see all our back ones that are on there. And what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to pause about a minute to get a glass of water because I was on Bannon one time, and he said, and a person called me and said, Steve, you get on and you don't breathe. So go home and get some oxygen. During the shows, and you tell everybody, I take about a minute or two, give you a chance to come on, think about stuff. I'm going to get a little water, breathe a little bit so that I can go on another 15 minutes and go on. So go ahead.
I love it. No, this is why I don't like to interrupt you because, again, and I'm going to get more into, a little bit of my story with you later on, but meeting you was unlike anybody else I'd ever met at a Media Row. It was at the Believers Summit in Florida, actually, where I met you. And it was the greatest thing ever because I learned so much in just a few minutes of meeting Steve Stern. And then we did an impromptu interview, and it was just masterful. So I love it. That's why I don't interrupt. I don't do anything, because you are of legend. So keep it going, sir. Keep it going. I know you're on a roll.
So let's continue on and talk about the election integrity precinct strategy, what we're doing, and what happened through all this particular events and what was going on. So just this past Wednesday, we had a big event. And every time we have this, we get between 4 and 10 million people on. And you post it, and we get 58 different countries sometimes more. So we're on radio, TV, everywhere in the country. So this past week, we had some great people on. We had Jerome Corsi on, talked about Trump EOs that he's talking about. We had Greg Stenstrom on talking about his new book, I Stand on My Briefs. We had Catherine Engelbrecht on from True to Vote, Patrick Byrne, which we haven't had on at all. Finally decided to come on. Harry Hari, who came on, and you were at last year's Trump International, and this year Harry came to it, and that's our fundraiser. And Harry at the airport fell and broke his leg, went to the hospital, but he still came and talked about our everything he did, and he's still hobbling around with his cane and everything, but he's coming on again, and he came on. And we're going to have Laura Shar on. We're going to have Susan Stivers on from Orange County. She talked about all the stuff that's going bad in Orange County for a Republican area where the Democrats got elected by fraud. Erin Atkins talked about Palm Beach, the fraud there. Dale Richardson talked about what's going on in Canada. John Vieira, let's talk about Johnny. He's votifynow.org. Very important. This is an app that we want everybody to get during the elections. You can report anything you see, crime, anything, people voting twice, whatever you see. And that was very important because he talks about it every 6 months, and we get more people involved. And we had one of the most important guys on this time, Dr. Rick Richards. I want everybody to get Ely, EELLY. Go there, because that's one of the most important things. It talks about the voter rolls and how fraudulent many of these states are, and he explains it all the time. And each time we have a podcaster on. John Gordon came on from, he's up in Palm Beach. I went to his house, did a thing, but he talks about his time in Georgia and what's going on in Georgia. We had Tim Richards on talking about Wisconsin. So we have a lot of people come on every time, 14, 15 people. And, producing something like that is a nightmare. It takes a lot of time to do that. And over the last years that we've had it, we've really never had a problem, which is unbelievable because we always have a couple of backups. We'll tell you one interesting story. We had General Flynn on one time, and I have my TV over to the right here, and it just happened to be on in Real America Voice. And I turned to the side. General Flynn's supposed to come on at 3:30. It's now 3:15, and I see him on a program. I knew he wasn't going to be finished. So I called while somebody was talking. I was on the side talking to his secretary and say, what the heck's going on? So, he got tied up here, but he'll come on at 3:45. So we had to have somebody sub in. Well, luckily, we always have subs there. They subbed in, and he came on at 3:45, and nobody knew the difference. So, it takes a lot because if somebody doesn't show up, you gotta really know what's going on. So all these have happened over the last years, and we've never had a problem, and that's terrific. We did have one little problem at Trump International. We put on like 30 different people, and one of the guys' internet went down, so we had to just have the people going on. So we have this every month, once or twice, and coming up, on June 10th, we're going to have a very, 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 very special event, and that's going to be very important. And what's going to happen is we started about 3 months ago something called Precinct Project USA.org. Precinct Project USA.org. We're going to talk about this a little bit, and I want everybody to come on, but to join. But on June the 10th, we're going to have a big event, big. Probably the biggest event we ever had. It's normally the Flag Day. We have a Flag Day event every year, but this year, because it's on a Sunday, we're going to do a 250th anniversary and a precinct project event all in one. So it's going to start at 12 o'clock Eastern time. The first hour, we're going to do precinct project. And the next three hours, we're going to have some very important people come on, talk about what they think of the country for the 250th anniversary. And who we're going to have on? We're going to have on Joe DeBox. Joe DeBox is one of our terrific friends. We're going to have Patrick Byrne on. We're going to have Grant Stitchfield on. While we were talking, I got a phone call from Linda Lanier. Linda Lanier is on every time. She sings her song, patriotic song, and then she'll talk about what's going on. Mike Lindell will come on. Steve Bannon, Wayne Root. He's going to do a terrific job. He always does. He always supports us. Todd Callender is going to be on. John Solomon, Peter Tickton, Dr. Naomi Wolf, Randolph Russell out of Georgia. We're going to have Dory Wiley talking about patriotic stuff and many, many more people. So this goes on for 3 hours with terrific people talking about why they love our country in the 250th anniversary.
Stern American and the Flag Shirt invite you to celebrate 250 years of America on Wednesday, June 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us live on the Stern American Rumble channel, hosted by Steve Stern, featuring patriotic leaders and distinguished speakers, honoring America's past, celebrating its present, and inspiring its future. Don't miss this historic event.
So let's go back to the 250. This is the official hat. We have 10 different hats, and we have hundreds of different shirts. This is just one of them. And in the background here, you can see we have sweatshirts. We have many, many different things for America 250. And we could see it popping on for the last month. People have been buying fantastic stuff. So we're going to honor the United States with our 250th anniversary. And we're going to have a terrific group of people. And then the first hour, we'll have Dan Schultz on talking about precinct strategy. Again, why is that important? Because that's how the Republicans work. And when we had our election security thing, one of the most important things that happened was when President Trump won, I'm going to tell you what happened. And you can see this, protectthevote.com. Well, why is this important? Protectthevote.com is how we get poll watchers and poll workers. You sign up, and want everybody to go to protectthevote.com because this is one of the reasons why President Trump won. Just one of the reasons. And how did I know that? Because Susie Wiles texted me after President Trump won, added a clear blue saying, thank you for all you did. I went back to her and said, what did you do? Along with many, many other people said what we did. He said, well, what you did was, one, you got us about 40,000 poll watchers and poll workers. And as we got closer to the election, you got them where we needed them. Detroit, Philadelphia, and many places where the Democrats had strongholds and we didn't have enough poll watchers and poll workers. Now, why did that happen? Well, because President Trump and the Republican Party got 6,000 lawyers, and they had 100,000 more poll watchers and poll workers during that election. That was just one of the reasons that he won, because as you remember, those lawyers went in Wisconsin when they tried to bring in ballots in the middle of the night, and many, many other areas where they tried to steal the election, but it was too big to rig. And unfortunately, there were areas that, such as Orange County, where we lost 3 Republicans because of how they stole the election, bringing in ballots a week after the election, then 2 weeks, then 3 weeks after the election, which was ridiculous. And of course, they just passed that all ballots have to be in by election day, which is going to stop them, hopefully, from what's going on. So what we did also was we had so many different people on, Cleta Mitchell, Joe Von Pulitzer, telling people how to protect the vote. And even though it wasn't 100%, it was a lot better. So we didn't realize that we did all this until everybody started coming in and saying, hey, thank you. So that's why it's important to watch our election security call when we have it. Now, let's say you can't watch it. It's always live there on our Stern American Rumble. So if you missed the program, or if you want to go back and see some of the past ones, very important to do that, because we have a lot of people on that tell you what to do, ask you to get involved in maybe their organization. Cleta Mitchell's EIN is a very important thing. And, I'm going to be on there talking about our January 10th and something very important. On June the 14th, every show that I've had on, I always lead with Tina Peters. And it was very interesting because we had 100,000 people call the governor, And, you know, she's going to be released on this day, June the 1st. So we hope it happens today. And if it does, you know, we will, on June the 14th, we're going to have a marathon from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. Sovereign Radio is sponsoring it, and I will be speaking on it. And many people will be doing a fundraiser for Tina because she owes at least $200,000 to her all the lawyers. And Peter Tickton will be on there, and John Case. We've had them on many times. And, you know, many people in the United States have no clue who Tina Peters is. So please, I'm not going to go over it, but look her up. Find out why she got 9 years in jail. And thank God she is getting released today. And that's one of the most important things that's ever happened in this country, because President Trump pardoned her, but because it's a state crime, of course, it should have been a federal crime. She should never have been in there. So thank God. And let's hope everybody donates a little bit. $5, $10 goes a long way. So every event that I've had, I try to bring in Tina Peters. She's called me from prison numerous times. And I want to thank everybody who spent the time calling, praying, sending her cards for Mother's Day. You know, there's not too many people we go behind in the United States, but everybody, you know, did a terrific job in helping her. So it's very, very important to do that. So let's go back to precinctprojectusa.org. Precinctprojectusa.org. And why is that important? So I'm going to bring that up right here. So please, I don't ask too much, but please join precinctprojectusa.org. And why is that important? So a couple of people came to me about 4 months ago and said, hey, can you help us start precinctprojectusa.org? I said, of course. And what was the purpose of that? Well, Precinct Strategy is a website, and people go there to find out how to get involved. Precinct Project is an extension of that. And what we do is we have Velma Ruth in DC, who's our administrator. And we have 1 or 2 or 3 people from every state that you can call and find out how to get involved. Once a month, we send out newsletters. Once a month, we have a call, and we have 8 or 9 or 10 million people on it again, finding out how to get involved in precinct strategy, how to get involved in the Republican Party. There is many, many things on there that you could learn, because a lot of people don't even understand what they have to do when they become a committeeman. Everything is on there. We explain it. Every time we get on, we have different people explaining it. So we're going to have on our January 10th show. We're going to have the guy, some of the people who started with me, Andy Meehan from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, John Broadbent from Ohio, Joe Brazil from Wisconsin, Steve Gillen from New York. Those are pretty much the people I started with. Now we're going to have some YRs on there. Mario Nicoletti will be on there. And why is it important to have YRs, and what are we doing with the young Republicans? YR stand for Young Republicans. If we don't get to 20 to 40 people involved, you know, I'm 85, so I get limited time to be here. And most of the people that are in the Precinct Project and the precinct committee men and women are between 60 and 90. You know, and as those people get ill, or as they retire or pass away, we need to have new blood to come in it. So we're training new young Republicans all over the country to be able to do that, because nobody's really gone after them. You know, a lot of the rhinos and establishment people are in the country do not want young people in their organizations because they're afraid that they're going to take over. And they have the energy to do that. So I'm happy. We will train them to take over, because we need young people to get in there. So how do we, you know, keep our precinct strategy, our committee men and everything going with dollars? So twice a year we have fundraisers. So our next fundraiser, which you came to one a couple of years ago in Trump International in Palm Beach. This year, we had one at Trump International, and the next one is going to be Trump Day, September the 19th, and that's going to be at the racetrack down here in Hallandale. And we are going to have Steve Bannon. He said he was going to do it this year. I called him up a couple of weeks ago, and he said, pencil me in for this event, and we'll probably have one of the guys who are going to be running for governor be there, but we don't know who's going to be there yet, because we have to wait for the primary in August to see who's going to win the primary in order to be able, because nobody's going to accept it because, they may not be the winner. So we have to wait for that. But Steve said he would do it. And that was my birthday present. I called him up on my birthday and I said, hey, Steve, what are you going to do for me for my birthday? And he said, well, and I said to him, it's a funny thing because I had called him to do a video, and he said to me, happy birthday. And he knew it was my birthday because he's going to have me on the show later. And I said, well, thank you for all you're doing. And he said, I don't do much. All I do is get behind the desk every day and talk for 4 hours. He said, you're the guy that goes out, and we appreciate it that you go on the road, you go out, you get people involved all over the country. And that's my main mission, to get people involved. So precinctprojectusa.org is adapting and trying to get 200,000 new committeemen and committeewomen so we can fill all the roles that we can do that. And how do we do it? One of the ways that I said to everybody is, hey, every committeeman and committeewomen, the 200,000, bring one person in. How hard is it? You don't know anybody that can be a committeeman and committeewoman? Of course you do. Pick up the phone. You get all this data that tells you all the Republicans in your area. So it would be that. So now the next 15 minutes, I got to take a drink of water. So we're going to give you a chance to come in and talk a little bit because I can feel myself not breathing.
Oh no, take it easy. Take it easy. You got another 85 years to go. So, you have to stay hydrated. There's such important things going on, and so many important things every day. And people always say the same thing. Well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I get that often when I do my show, people saying, well, how can we do anything? What can we do? And I always direct them towards you and the work that you're doing, because there's a lot of people that talk a good game, but this is about putting, action behind the words. And I think that's the most important thing. And it really, excuse me, it speaks to you and how you've lived your life and the things that you've done. And you haven't just spoken a good game, you've gone out and actually done the work. And I think that's what's so impressive. And that's why it's beholden upon those younger generations. And I don't know what I'm considered anymore at 43, but we have to kind of pick up that mantle and run with it, because we learn from those who do more than talk, but actually get out there and get involved. And, I think it's important. And also, to kind of not jump around all over the place, but we're recording this on Memorial Day. And I also think it's imperative for people to know that you also, among everything else that you've done, you also served your country as well. And this is what I mean. I think it's so great that, and I'm honored that you shared what you shared about you starting out, but people don't understand that you're not just a patriot because you're out there actually putting the work in to try to secure our elections, to save this republic. You've also put your life on the line. You signed that line, that dotted line, and you went and actually served your country. And, this is what I mean. People don't understand the full weight of all that you do and all that you are. And like President Trump, and I compare you to a lot, because you're very humble, and I don't think that you like to tell anybody the things that you do. And all I could say is, for 20 years now, July 3rd is 20 years that I've been involved in this. And I was 12 years old out there in the Republican Party of Blooming Grove, in Pennsylvania, out there waving signs for Governor Ridge of all people. And, but I've been an activist and involved for 20 years after I got out of the Army. And I've met so many people, and a lot of people, I'm sure you know them all. And they always say, don't meet your heroes. I will say, out of all the people that I've met, there were three that stood out to me. And one, I'll start out with Mike Lindell. Hollis flagged him down when he got to the event, the People's Convention, and he had just gotten there, and his people said that he'll come and talk to you later. And then he said, no, he'll do it now. Sat down for 5 minutes, it became an hour. And it was so great. And then he called us 2 days later. Hollis gets a phone call from Mike Lindell. I'm like, yeah, it's probably it's not Mike Lindell. No, it was Mike Lindell. And he was even greater in real life. The next person that I met and had the honor of going to the White House as well to meet was President Trump, which, I've adored this man and respected him since the 6th grade. So it was an honor for me. And then there's all the other people that I met. I have nothing really of relevance to say about them. But then there's the person that I met in Florida, the hero that I didn't know, and that's you. because out of all these people, there's so few that will actually be there for you. And I'm not, I don't want to go anywhere I'm not supposed to go, but Steve Stern is somebody who has done for my wife and myself and for this independent organization and media, what we do, putting our own money, our own blood, our own sweat, and life gets in the way. And Steve Stern has gone above and beyond to help us when nobody else would even consider it. Don't even, it's just not who we are to go and ask and say, hey, we need help too. This man cares, and he's there for people. And he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be, but he said something to me that stuck out, and it's you help other people. When you've achieved something, you help others and you give back. And so many people say it. And I swear to God, I'm not an emotional person, but it gets me emotional because it means so much to me that this man lives those words and he actually puts it into action. And I cannot tell you, just the amount of gratitude that I have for you, for what you've done, continue to do for us, and what you've done for so many. I think that, again, I don't want to put you on the spot and put a spotlight on you, but I think people deserve to know, just the type of person that you are and the sacrifices that you've made and the generosity and just the effort. And, you don't ever ask for much, ever. You just ask, hey, can you share this? And I'm grateful we're able to share it and get it out there to millions of people. And I think it's amazing. But, I wish we could do more, and we want to do more, and we always want to do more. But you don't ask for much of anything, but you give so much more than you ask for. And I think it's imperative for people to understand. And obviously our audience knows you all over the world, but I want them to know more of you, the core, your character, because you're not just the patriotic guy on TV. And at 85 years old, this man has more energy. I said it when I met him years ago. He has more energy than 1,000 me's and 1,000 you's combined. All right. This man he's a beast. He keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, but he does it out of love. And, I'm going to say it so he doesn't have to. There's people that will let you down. There's people that will not follow through. There's people that will, not keep their word. And I get upset. And this man has essentially mentored me to say, hey, keep moving, keep going. Don't get caught up in that. And he's right. And I'm cognizant enough to say that I could always learn and be better. And this is why everything that I do, I want to mirror myself after the type of person this man is, because this is who you want to be like. This is the type of person that you want to be like. And I hope to be even a quarter of as good of a person as you. And I thank you for all that you've done for us, all that you continue to do for this country, and for so many people who don't even know that you're responsible and you're this engine behind everything that is happening. And I think it's just so important for the world to understand that. So, that's just a piece. And even, inviting us to the Trump International to go live and broadcast the event, my wife getting to sing there. And, it's an incredible honor, but the honor really is just for us knowing you and having the chance to work with you and to call you a friend, to call you somebody that I admire, that we admire, that this country admires. And we owe you such a debt of gratitude and, and so many more things. But that's why you deserve this, Steve. You deserve to be called out for the humble beast that you are, because you are a beast. And I've been there. I've been in that room. And it was really cool getting to go to Steve's office. And it's a trip. I had no other way of saying it. And this man is on the phones nonstop, but always makes the time to talk to you. Nobody else called me to check in, and with what's going on with me for months of no job and everything else, things happen. This man checks in. He think he just has time to sit by and let me call up and see, let's shoot the shit for a while. No. But he cares about the people who show it in return. And I think it's amazing that you haven't been lost in the mix of this, for all that you've done, for all the people that and you kind of rub shoulders with, so to say, or rub elbows with. That's what I'm trying to say. You're still just you. And I'm so grateful to know you, and so grateful to call you a friend, and so grateful for all that you do. So I don't know, Steve. It's just it's It's amazing. And I wanted to ask, what prompted you, to join the military when you did as well? I mean, with everything else going on, you didn't need to do it. You were already successful because of hard work and just, what prompted you to just sacrifice?
Well, I think it was serving my country, just like you did. And, the people that serve their country and understand what's going on, that's how they love this country. That's why we're doing this 250 and why we do the flag shirt. And, let's bring back up Mike Lindell. I was the first guy to endorse him for the governor of Minnesota. I don't endorse too many people. What happened was I had called up Mike way back when we first started doing this. And he actually answered the phone on the first call. And he said, "Do I know you?" He said, "No." I said, "No, I don't know you. You don't know me, but I love your towels." Well, as a salesman, because I'm a salesman, you know what I'm saying? And I do the fundraising for Broward County. And I know that if somebody locks you out from the front door, you go in through the back door. And if they knock you out the back door, you go in through the side door, and you never give up. Of course, you can't win every battle. So I said to Mike, "I love your towels." Well, when you tell somebody who has a product that they love their product, they're going to listen. He said, "Can I help you?" I started talking about precinct strategy. And I said, "Do you know what that is?" He said, "I don't. Let me know." And I started talking. He said, "Hang on one second. Let me get my assistant on." So we started talking about it. He said, "Steve, I want you and Dan Schultz on my program the next day." On the program the next day, he endorsed precinct strategy. He was the first person that endorsed precinct strategy because he understood how they did that. General Flynn, the same way. How did I get to General Flynn? I picked up the phone. Somebody gave me his number, and I called his number. And people say, also, "Do you have President Trump's number?" Yes, I do have President Trump's number. Have I called him? No, because I don't have anything. I want to say something, but it's got to be very important before I call him. So one of the things I've asked Wayne Root, who's a very good friend of mine, ask President Trump, we need a couple of people in the White House who listen to the grassroots. You know what I mean? He doesn't have anybody. And that's so important. And I understand that. Wayne understood that. I was standing with General Flynn at an event that he orchestrated in Palm Beach, and he texted President Trump the same thing. We haven't seen it yet. So we will send this up to President Trump somehow. And I hope he listens. And I hope that he understands that we need people in the White House to help do that. Now, we had Jeff Clark up there, but he left the White House. He invited me up to the White House, but I had a back operation. And, I'm a lucky guy because I fell in Spain. I had stenosis, hit my head, and I take blood thinners. And God saved me because, I didn't have a blood bleed and I didn't go to the hospital, but I did get headaches. So something must have happened. So, we're lucky every day. And, because we're doing this on Memorial Day, because I don't do anything pretty much after 6 o'clock. Because people say, "Well, do you have a family life?" I said, "Of course. I just came back yesterday from New York when my grandson graduated from Cornell. And, 8 grandchildren, you got to have time for them. You got to have time for your family. You got to have time for everything." Well, people said, "Well, how do you do it?" I said, "Well, look, sometimes you got to do 2 things at one time. When you're driving, you better be on the phone, hands off, because that saves a lot of time. I'm texting at 4:30 in the morning because I know Steve Bannon's up at 4:30 in the morning. And that's how I get in touch with him. Because if I text him at 8 o'clock, he's busy already. But at 4:35, not too many people are up texting him. So you got to know what to do, how to do it. And that's the way I've always been. But the most important thing is I put my sign up there. I always put up my phone number and I put up my email, sstern1054@gmail.com, sstern1054@aol.com. I return every email if I see it. Now, some go into spam. I return every call. And that's some of the things we do. When people say, "How do you do it?" My dad told me, "Just do it." And that's what I do. I've always followed that. And that was before Nike said, "Just do it." So he really should have owned that. You know what I mean? My dad should have owned that slogan. So you have to knock on doors. You have to make every moment of every day important. If I'm sitting there waiting for something, I got 2, 3 phones. I'm texting people. We don't even know if they get it because not everybody replies, but I reply to every text that I get. So if you send me a text or an email and you don't get it, you better do it again, because a lot of times it's being blocked by Google and by Apple. people think that you get every email, every text. No, I send a lot of emails out. They go into spam. They get blocked. But you just keep doing it. You know what I'm saying? And then sooner or later you do it. Now, you said something very important. There's a lot of people in this country that are too big to return a call or too big to get back to you. Terrible. You know what I mean? Because, you know, and there are some people on X who we asked to put something on and said, yeah, it's $2,000 every time you ask me to do something. What? You know, I do everything for free. You know what I'm saying? And it costs you money. But when you're successful, and if that person's successful and they don't do it, and, you know, it's not good. You know what I mean? And, you know, the good people like Wayne Root, General Flynn, Mike Lindell, Peter Tickton, those are the people. Grant Stichfield, he always answers me. Mel Kay, Todd Callender, John Solomon. These people don't have to answer you. Dr. Naomi Wolf, you know, but they do, because they know that what I do for the country, or try to do, you know, I'm a one-man show. I have an assistant and tech guy, but, you know, my assistant goes to school part-time, so he's not there all the time. Volunteers, you try to get volunteers, very difficult in this world. You know, it's very difficult to do. But I'm very proud that that I've lived a great life. And, you know, if God takes me tomorrow, I know I've done everything possible that I could help this country. And, you know, many people have recognized that. Steve Bannon, you know, anytime I call him, want to be on a program, John Fredericks, Steve Gruber, all these people are very helpful. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, it's nice. I've done 150 different podcasts. People will call me up and say, can you come on my podcast? They may have 100 people listen, but it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Because that one person that listens to you may be the most important person in the United States. You know, I've gone down into Miami and done a podcast, got soaking wet, and still got on the podcast. You know what I'm saying? And it's very important to let the people know. I can tell you how important it is. President Trump, through his son, the younger son, he told him to get on podcasts to the young people, because that's who helped him win the election. So the more podcasts that we could get together, because, you know, when I get on, I can talk about the machines. I can talk about anything on a podcast, where if I get on Newsmax and they threw me off Newsmax because I mentioned Mike Lindell TV, that I was going to be on it. And the producer said, you can't mention anybody else's TV show on Newsmax, and we can't have you on anymore. I said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You know what I'm saying? And One America News, the same thing. You know, when One America News started, I saw them. I went out to San Diego, spoke to the guy. I got them 40,000 people, and still today they help us and they get people on. And, you know, if you ask them for a favor, they do it. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, there are people that recognize it, and, you know, those are the people that we trust and we help. Now, you know, if Wayne Root calls me up and says, hey, can you help me? I drop everything I'm doing. If Steve Bannon does the same thing, they don't do it. But, you know, if they would, I would do that. If you called me up, the same thing, because there are certain people in this country that care. And those are the people that we go to bat for. So I'm running out of steam. I want to tell everybody, hopefully they had a great Memorial Day. Let's review our what we're going to do. Our precinct project, June the 10th. We want everybody to go to precinctprojectusa.org. And we want you to come on June the 10th by going to Stern American Rumble. It'll be live on that, along with 100 podcasters. You'll be streaming it. So voice of the people, they always get behind us 100%. We love you for that. And whatever you ask me to do, I'm there for you, because you're there for me. And then June the 14th, for Tina Peters, we do anything for her that we can, and we hope to have her on our program if they let her do that. We're not sure if it's going to happen, but we will put her on June the 10th if they allow to do it. We don't know what, you know, when she gets out on June the 1st, what they're going to tell her she could do and what she can't do. So we'll see what happens. So again, Stern American, sstern1054@gmail.com. Get a flag shirt, www.theflagshirt.com. And I end with action, 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 and get involved.
Amen. Steve Stern, thank you from the bottom of my heart, always, for always being there for us, always being there for everyone, being there for this country. Your service is amazing. We love you. God bless you. And here's to the next 85 years of you kicking ass and going strong, because you will. And by the way, this man had back surgery, and I swear to God, he was up and back at it maybe about, I don't know, a week later. Nothing holds him down. He's a beast, okay? So thank you. And obviously, all the links are going to be down below in the show description to everything that Steve has spoken about. And get involved, ladies and gentlemen. You know Steve. You love Steve. We all love Steve. And we need the help. So thank you all. God bless you all, Steve. God bless you, sir, always. And we will talk again soon. And thank you for this. I appreciate you always.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Stern American and the Flag Shirt invite you to celebrate 250 years of America on Wednesday, June 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us live on the Stern American Rumble channel, hosted by Steve Stern, featuring patriotic leaders and distinguished speakers, honoring America's past, celebrating its present, and inspiring its future. Don't miss